having problems in the Ashes Easter egg, maybe the lightning never shows up for you, or you can't get the bear early enough, or you're wasting rounds and you keep ending up at a high round and you fail the lockdown and you don't know why, or the boss fight is just clapping you even after the nerf. If that sounds like you, this video is going to solve all of your problems because I've compiled 45 straight minutes of information to make sure that you never fail the Easter egg again. So drop a like on the video so that YouTube knows that you like this content in case you lose the link to this video in the future, and without further ado, we can get started. To begin with, for loadout, stuns are nice to spawn in with so that you can do the Klaus step a little more easily without spending salvage, but that's not vital. And tomahawks are good because you need them for the Easter egg, but they're not necessary to spawn in with if you don't want to, because you can get free tomahawks from in the map. But toxic growth straight away off the jump, yes, spawn in with this, it's fantastic. I'd also recommend an assault rifle with the smoke grenade attachment, and we'll come back to this in a little bit, but you can find this attachment on ARs and also actually on marksman rifles, but it will take a little bit of leveling up in order to unlock it. However, it's gonna be worth the grind, I promise, and I'll show you why a little later in the video. For augments, it's essential that you put extra charge on Ether Shroud, and I'd probably go with Burst Dash if you're in solo, but I'd definitely recommend Group Shroud if you're in co-op. For Vulture Aid, I'd recommend Picky Eater, and you're going to need to do this in conjunction with finding and grabbing a Casimir in your game. You can also craft a Casimir too, but you just want to make sure that you've got Casimirs in that slot because then you'll continuously pick up more Casimirs as you play. And the same goes for monkeys if you prefer monkeys. Just make sure that you pick one up in your game, and then that way Picky Eater will kick in and you'll start seeing more of them drop from various sources on the map. Then for Quick Revive, we're going to want to turn on Equivalent Exchange. For Stamina Up, I highly recommend the Guns Up augment, as this is going to mean that you don't have to drop your gun every time you want to sprint, which will make a massive difference later in the boss fight. And I also recommend the Supercharged Major Augment for Speed Cola, as that will mean that you charge your field upgrade faster, and having just one extra charge in the boss fight could be the difference between life and death. I also think it's a decent idea to use Electric Cherry as your major for elemental pop, and I think Chill Berry is a pretty good option for your minor on elemental. On PhD, your major, in my opinion, should be PhD Slider, as that will damage any enemies that you slide into while you're trying to dodge explosions in the boss fight, and your minor augment should be Tribologist, or if you like, you can use Environmentalist. On Jug, I really like Reactive Armor, but it's not amazing in the boss fight in my experience, so I think it's really worth considering Probiotic to increase your max health, or to go with Iron Core, where your health is increased when all your armor plates are broken, and both of those are great options, because in the boss fight, you often don't have any plates, and so Iron Core is going to give you a really strong advantage. Now, I could at this point go through a whole list of recommendations for all of the double minor augments I would equip for every single perk and etc. But the issue is I'm pretty confident that most of you guys do not have all of those unlocked, because you need to complete the skill tree for that perk in order to be able to equip two minors. So I'm just going to keep it to single recommendations in this video so far, and I'll give double recommendations in my future tips videos, which you'll be able to find on my channel, so make sure you're subscribed for those. So we'll leave it there for augments for now, but I will return to augments as we go through the video because some of them are really relevant to specific steps, so it's just going to be easiest to talk about them then. The one thing I'd warn against is the Vulture Aid augment that automatically equips plates rather than having to go through the plating animation. And the reason for that is I think it's a bit better to have control over when you plate in the boss fight, and that augment kind of gets rid of that control. So as much as it seems like it might be a really good idea, I'd dissuade you from using it for now. For Gobblegums, we'll talk about boss fight gobbles just before we talk about the boss fight itself later in the video. But for spawning in, if you want to get your toxic growth on the way ASAP, then you've got some pretty cheap rare gobble options, such as using Armamental Accelerator, or you can obviously just pop a power keg and get a charge straight away. Next, let's talk about what to do in the spawn when you start your match. First of all, you want to hit the vending machine every round that you're in the spawn, as these can give ether crystals and can even give you a free ray gun. Then if you've spawned in with a power keg, you're going to pop that and then use toxic growth on the plant spawns, and you can grab the fumigator from just here around this corner. You'll activate the plant round 1 with toxic growth on it, you'll let it finish, then you'll collect the rewards, end round 1, and reactivate that same plant. Do this over and over again, round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, and so long as you're quick, your toxic growth should last over the course of several rounds, rounds. And this will allow you to get pack-a-punched by round 5 on that weapon that you spawned in with, which should have those smoke grenades I mentioned. While you're doing all of this, you'll also earn some money, so I'd recommend buying Quick Revive first, because it's really great for faster health regen, and will then also mean that you've got equivalent exchange right from the beginning of your match. But honestly, if you're in the first 15 or even 20 rounds of the game and you lose an equivalent exchange, I would restart your run. I'm not gonna lie, that thing is so unbelievably useful for the boss fight, and to waste a charge of it on round 7 means you should probably just be starting again. Now, while you're doing stuff in the spawn, you can pick up the stun grenade near Quick Revive, because we'll be using stuns later for Klaus, and you're also going to want to pick up this small weed on this ramp just here. Next, let's talk about the process of leaving the spawn. You've got to do 2 things. You've got to choose when to leave, and you've got to choose where to go to. In my opinion, you should base the when to leave on whether or not you've got yourself the rewards that you're looking for from your toxic growth. And typically, what I'm looking for here is a purple wrench and a PAP 2 crystal. I get these very consistently so long as I'm hitting my plant every single round. But if you're coming up to that first Ravage round and you're still at PAP 1 blue rarity, I don't know if it's necessarily worth leaving the spawn at that point. Just be careful, obviously, because if you stay there till round 8 and you go too near to Uber Klaus, you're gonna spawn him in, and that's gonna be a whole pain in the butt. So now let's talk about where to go. I wouldn't just automatically base this on where the box is, because we're doing this strat to pack-a-punch your main loadout weapon, and so we're a little less box reliant. So instead, I recommend going straight to Blackwater Lake. When you get there, pick up the jar of spores, and if you don't have a tomahawk, you can interact with this trophy. That will then spawn a tomahawk just outside the building, and you can grab it and very quickly do the tomahawk Easter egg, and that will get you some extra rewards as well and boost your salvage. Once you've turned the power on in Blackwater Lake, we're gonna move on to Ashwood, and if you've done this before your first Ravager round, which will either be round 5 or round 6, you can use the saw trap at Ashwood in order to get yourself the Ravager eyes just in case you need them later in the Easter egg. However, if you've already passed round 5 or 6 here, it's not a big deal. This is a super easy one to do at any point in your game. But a recommendation is if you're doing the Ravager step during a zombie round, I try and avoid killing too many zombies with the trap, because the points that you earn from doing that are not that great compared to you just killing the zombies yourself. And just a note here for people that are getting lost on the map. I'm just going to spend 2 seconds on this. If you're facing this church from inside Ashwood, to the left of you is Blackwater Lake, and to the right is Vandorn Farm. Then if we do a swivel and face the other way, to the left is Zarya Cosmodrome, and the right is Exit 115. So once you're done with power at Ashwood and PAPs installed, you're going to go to Vandorn, and the first thing you need to do is place the spore on the horse that's outside that's got all the spores on it. This is going to take 3 rounds to grow, and while you're in Vandorn, you can throw a tomahawk at the hanging zombie, and you can also pick up the container between the walls by the stairs in the barn. This is setting some stuff up for later, so bear with me. And the next time you're at Ashwood, you can pick up the Molotov just by the garage, and then when you come back to the farm, you can burn that limb that you've chopped off, and again, if you need it later in your game, you'll already have it picked up super early on. But rather than just rushing off to Ashwood straight away here, we're going to do the Wisp T Easter egg at this point, as this is going to save us points, and we do need it for the quest. So when you're upstairs in the farmhouse, you'll see this TV. Interact with it over and over until you see 2 girls on screen, then keep interacting with it until you see 1 girl on screen, then go down into the basement, go over to that girl and interact, and she'll disappear, and then go back to the TV, interact with it over and over again until both girls are missing, and then you'll find the girls out in the yard by the silo. Go over to them and interact, and you'll get a free Wisp tea along with some other rewards, and this will mean that it's just 1 less perk you have to purchase. Now, a bonus tip also, just for you guys to be aware of, is that you'll now be starting to get through the rounds, and you'll find that sometimes your zombie's just gonna bleed out at the end of a round, and it's very annoying, especially in solo. But luckily, there's the Wisp T minor augment called Zombie Sitter, which keeps the last zombie distracted until the round time's out. And this is just going to mean that you're harassed less by the zombie, so you can get more done in that end of round time. So we just got free Wisp Tea, we're now actually going to get free Juggernog. To do this, we're going to go to Exit 115, and you need to open the full map with Tessie anyway, so just drive on over there. And at the diner, you're going to start work on getting your key by killing the newly spawned in zombies. And it usually won't spawn straight away if there's only 1 zombie left in the round. You'll usually need to go to the next round. But the way I normally do this is I get some kills in the diner, as I find it's a little easier to keep track of where it drops when I'm in there. But you can have the zombie, the cook zombie, step out out of the diner and die outside and it be on the floor out there, so just be careful not to lose it on the ground wherever you are killing zombies. While in the diner, we are going to pick up the eggs, and then you're going to go over to the soda fountain just here, and you're going to get yourself free Juggernog by interacting with the machine. So we're making good progress here. We've got good points economy, we've got powerful weapons, we're getting some early free perks, and this is usually a great opportunity to then kill Klaus, because your power is kind of vastly outperforming what the game expects you to have at this round. And the one addition that I'd make to your firepower that you do have to buy yourself, as opposed to just getting it from a free side quest, is I quite like putting Napalm Burst on my gun at this time. And so once I've done that, I'll then go back to the spawn, I'll walk next to the container that spawns Klaus in, and he can spawn so long as it's round 8 or onwards. But then rather than trying to take him down in the spawn area, what I often do is I jump back to the farm, checking for my 3 gauntlet symbols as I do so, and then when I get there, I run over to here where I'm showing you in the gameplay, and I get the insta-kill power-up, I activate that, and that then means that we can kill Klaus much faster because insta-kill is active. So this is just one of those ways that's going to mean that you never fail this step where you get an annoying down here, because Klaus will be much softer when you follow this little procedure. And as a general tip here, I'd overall really advise you to try to avoid using Ether Shroud during all of these steps, because you'll want to switch back to it at some point once you're done with your toxic growthing. But it's not a good idea to just spam Ether Shrouds, because with every use of your field upgrade, the next one charges slower. So really try your best to avoid using it earlier in your game unless you absolutely have to, and that way you'll be able to charge it up a little bit quicker in the boss fight. Now I know some people have some trouble with the farm symbols because the textures don't load in fast enough, and I've got a solution for that as well. Basically what you're going to want to do is take the jump pad from farm to Janus, for example, but then immediately take it back again, and that should fix the problem. They should be loaded when you do the second jump. Now by the point that we've picked up the stabilizer chip from Klaus, we obviously need to go and install that into Klaus himself. So go put your stabilizer chip in and then unlock Klaus with the stuns that we've picked up through the game. And there's more stun grenades in the room with Jug if you need a second stun. Usually it only actually takes me 2 stuns for this, but sometimes it will take me 3 if one of the stuns doesn't register. So just look for the spinning head / concussed look from Klaus, and that's a sign that you've done it correctly. And then you're going to go to Zarya Cosmodrome immediately in Tessie, and you're going to do the canister step as normal. A pro tip for the little defense here is it's generally very easy in my experience, but don't be afraid to position Klaus right in front of you while you're doing the defense so that he can take a lot of the heat off your back and you can kind of just stand there inside the scanner. So once you're done with the scanner step, if you aren't planning on filling your canister immediately, like if you don't want to do all of that charging with the generators, and maybe you've got some other stuff in mind that you want to get to, you don't have to leave it at Zarya Cosmodrome. You can actually hop into the bed of Tessie, like the back part of Tessie, and you can drop the canister there with your crouch button, and it will then stay in the truck bed as you drive around without the need to carry it on your back when you exit Tessie. This means that you can basically run errands and not really need to worry about the canister too much. But what do you do when you are ready to do the canister? Well, the best route to do this, if you want to be absolutely sure you don't fail this, is actually to go to Blackwater Lake first. So even though you're going to be driving through Ashwood, if you do Ashwood first, it means that you then need to go to Blackwater, and then you need to go all the way around Blackwater to either spawn and then farm, or to Ashwood and then farm. And that's just going to eat up a little bit of your time. Whereas if you start in Blackwater Lake, you can then go from Blackwater to Ashwood, you can do the second generator in Ashwood, and then you just need to go from Ashwood to farm, and it's just one little connecting path in order to get there. So that's just slightly safer for time, but obviously this is not the hardest step in the egg by any means, so you're also welcome to just do Ashwood first. Also, the nice thing about this is we're ending at farm, so you're going to bring the canister down to the box, but then we've already checked the symbols earlier in our game, so this is a great time to start the cube step. Now, once you've done the cube step and you've got the gauntlet out of it, I would recommend pack-a-punching it immediately because it will get new abilities and it will also just be more valuable for some of the other stuff that we're about to do. The first of which is the mirror. So now that you've got the Wonder Weapon and you've got Wisp T, I'd recommend doing the powder step ASAP. So you want to trigger your Wisp inside the room with the mirror, and If it's not triggering for you, you're going to want to get rapid kills inside the room or close by to make the Wisp appear if it's off cooldown. And then once it's appeared, you can just run into the room very quickly and you'll see the Wisp attack the mirror. Then shoot it with a wonder weapon as normal, get that powder ASAP. And as soon as we've got it, we're going to then go straight to the lab and interact with the powder in the lab to see the chalk on the wall. And now you can see which items you need to collect. And the nice thing about this is we've already collected a couple, just sort of as insurance. But for all the items that are not shown on the wall, you don't need to collect them. So you don't need to waste time, for example, worrying about trying to get the bear appendage by beaming the bear with Tessie if that part is not written on the wall. Like if it doesn't say limbs, you don't need to do it. So that's a big time saver. You only need to focus on getting the items that the wall actually asks for. Now, if you do have limbs as one of your words on the wall, you need a bear, right? And you can do this from round 16 onwards with the bear that spawns at round 16. But if you've already gotten to this step and you're earlier than round 16, here's a trick to spawn a bear early so you don't get held up with your Easter egg progress. And you can also use this trick later in your game, for example, if you use the first bear at round 16, but then the bear dies from some other source and you don't get the part, you can just spawn another bear using the following trick. You're going to bring the wonder weapon to the crafting table room in Zarya Cosmodrome, and just outside the map through this fence thing here, you can see a skull. Shoot that with the wonder weapon, like so in the gameplay, and you'll see its eyes glow green. Then go to the window to the right of the PhD machine, and just here on the scaffolding outside, you can shoot another skull with the wonder weapon and suck it back, and its eyes will go green. And then finally, on the upper level, right in the kind of main area of Zarya in front of the rocket, you'll see a little hole here, and you can shoot the third skull in this dark spot, and that will spawn a bear in with purple eyes. Now, the easiest way to be successful in doing this step is to damage the bear with a weapon first, and this is why I actually really recommend having health bars on and damage numbers on, because as much as it's ugly, and I get that, it is giving you valuable information about how much health the bear has remaining, and that way you're less likely to accidentally kill it. You need to not kill it with your weapon, you need to only kill it with the beam of the car, obviously. So soften it up a little bit with your bullet weapon, and then beam it with the car as usual. Now, another tip is one of those parts requires you to use the Tessie beam to zap the purple pods around the map. And that's all well and good, but you should absolutely be still trying to do this continuously throughout your game. If you're at the end of a round and you're like, oh, I'm just going to flip into the next round, pause, okay? Don't just waste that extra 10 minutes of round that you've got available to you, but instead go around the map and punch that vending machine in spawn. Punch that vending machine in the diner area as well. And as you do all of this, look for those purple pods and shoot all of them. You can get Pack-a-Punch crystals for free, you can get Rayguns from them, you can get great rewards, and it's going to help with your salvage as well. So this is a good spend of your time. Now, in my opinion, you should be trying to do the lockdown in the lab here, Yuri's lab, as soon as possible after you get all the parts. Like, you don't want to go any extra rounds before you do this. You just want to get it done straight away if you can. And as you know, this is going to limit the amount of health that you have. So a few recommendations to make this easier and prevent unnecessary downs is make sure that the person that does this, if it's a solo game, that's you, or if it's a co-op game, it's whoever is the one that actually interacts with the table to start the blood sacrifice or whatever. Make sure that person is the one with the wonder weapon. And that's because the wonder weapon is going to heal you, and it can give you a small overheal. So yes, your health pool will be reduced, but the wonder weapon helps counteract that. You're going to need to shoot the 2 zombie spawns really rapidly and explode reload, and then do that over and over and over again. And if zombies get up in your face and you start panicking, you can melee spam as well, and that will lifesteal, and you'll actually lifesteal even more if you've got the Melee Macchiato Vampiric Augment on, or you can use Espresso for slightly faster melee attacks if you plan to be spamming. This is basically the one step in the Easter egg though where I'd say using Ether Shrouds is totally valid, as this is a really tricky lockdown. So don't be afraid to shroud if you need to, but while you're in that shroud, keep slaying out as fast as you can, because you need to fill the table with souls. Also, if you've got Casimir's at this point, I'd prefer that you use Casimir's over your Ether Shroud, because you can get Casimir's back, but an Ether Shroud use will mean that it charges slower in the future. So spam with the wonder weapon, do that explosion. You can also do the suck a couple of times, because when you suck those barbs back to you, it's going to life steal. And then if you start getting overwhelmed, chuck a Kaz, use that to reset yourself a little bit, do a little bit of life stealing, and then if you really must, then it's Ether Shroud time. Now, as all of this is happening, it's essential that you do every single TED trial that spawns into your game. At the launch of the game, one of the TED trials was actually broken, but Treyarch have since fixed that. So all the TED trials are absolutely worth it, and it's a good idea, if possible, to try to buy your perks pretty early in your match, so that by the time you're doing your second or maybe your third TED trial, you've already got all the perks. And this is because TED is going to give you perma perks if you've already got all the other perks in the game. These perma perks are perks that will stay on you even after you die and revive yourself with a self-res. And that means that in the boss fight, if you get knocked that final time with no equivalent exchange, you'll still have some perks when you get back on your feet, which is lovely. And also, a further pro tip for these TED tasks is if you use the Death Perception Augment Treasure Hunter, it's going to increase the rarity of rewards you get from reward crates. And so that means you can get even better stuff from TED. Now, to piggyback off that, to make this more worthwhile to be using that augment, you can always do the RCXD Easter egg here. So you're going to go upstairs in the little shack that is in the foggy area between the lake and Ashwood, and you're going to interact with this briefcase, and then you're going to do the RCXD race, and at the end, you'll get yourself a trophy, and you'll get a reward crate with rewards that will be boosted by Treasure Hunter. And it's a good idea to save that Easter egg until you've got all of the perks, in my opinion, because you can always just buy perks if you don't have them, but you can't buy perma perks, so better to use this as a way to kind of guarantee yourself a perma perk or two. Next, this is a warning, I guess. If you're getting to this point in the Easter egg, you're getting pretty deep here, and you might be tempted to save quit and then come back the next day and keep progressing. But I've had my steps at this point, like my lightning steps especially, mess up a little bit because I saved in the middle of it. So just be wary of that. I try and avoid save quitting at this particular juncture if it can be helped. Next, we're on to the keys step. First of all, you can't use jump pads with the keys, so if you're in a co-op game, make sure that one of your buddies is looking out for you if you're the one doing the keys. And by looking out for you, I mean driving you there in Tessie, like that really should be their job. This is also a step where if you really need to, you can use Ether Shroud when you're looking for keys. But in order to avoid having to use an Ether Shroud, what I quite like to do is just run past all the locations initially, not trying to actually get the key, but just basically scouting the area. And so I'll do that, and then I'll leave again in Tessie once I know where the key is. I'll let those zombies despawn by just driving to Ashwood, and then I'll go back where I know the key is, and I should usually be able to grab it without having to shroud when I do this method. It's also nice because sometimes you're like, oh, is the key there? Is the key not there? And the fastest way to make that evaluation is just to check the other spawn points. And if it's definitely not in the other two spots, then you know exactly where it is at that point. Now, a warning for this is I would avoid using Gobblegums when holding the key. I know that's really specific, but I've heard that the nowhere but there Gobblegum bugs the key out, so just avoid that at this stage. Also, if you're having trouble seeing the keys, a massive recommendation that I have is for you to go into your game settings and follow what I'm doing here. And you're basically going to be in the color filters, and you're going to set this to the filter that increases your saturation, and then set this setting to both. And that's going to mean that wherever the glow of the key is, like that little red or green or yellow glow, it's just going to be more saturated, and it will stand out a little better against some of the backdrop around you. Now, once you've gotten your keys and you get past the mid-game cutscene, the game might bug and change your Ether Shroud from having 2 charges with your extra charge augment to just 1. And if you notice this, you're going to want to just change your field upgrade to a different field upgrade and then change back to Ether Shroud to reset. There are also some other funky bugs that can happen when you get that mid-game cutscene. Some people get a black screen here. And so in that scenario, if you've got the option to save quit, then yeah, I guess you have to save your game. But ideally, you don't save quit here, like I said, because we're very close to lightning. The first thing you're going to do is just the Zarya stuff as normal. That, in my experience, is extremely straightforward. But if you're in a co-op game, the people that aren't the ones doing the actual shooting of the numbers or doing the shooting of the clock and then the little radar dishes kind of have nothing to do. So they should be being smart about doing things like still using toxic growth on plants to get extra pack-a-punch crystals if they need to, or working on getting their raygun from the box, or popping a gobblegum that's going to guarantee the raygun from the box, or punching those vending machines, or doing more side quests. Like, you want to be proactive with your time if you're not the wonder weapon holder at this point because you otherwise got basically nothing to do here. Also, a pro tip for the person that is doing all of the shooting the clock and getting your gun purple and all that stuff is that when you're in that purple mode on that timer, you can actually melee with the wonder weapon while purple and it won't lose your purple charge. And I also believe you can switch to your other weapon and use that and you'll stay purple. So while you're doing these steps, you don't have to just run around being completely useless and unable to shoot anything because you still can do damage with that other gun and with your melee, and you should be just fine. So you're going to finish Zarya, you're going to launch the rocket, and you're then on to the lightning step. This can be done all in one round if you're quick, and the nice thing is I have a strat here to spawn the lightning in, so you don't have to wait for it anymore. You can just get lightning on any round you want. I think probably with the exception of Ravager rounds, but I actually haven't tested that. So let's talk about what you do to do it all in one round if you've already got lightning, and then we'll talk about just forcing the lightning, okay? So to do it all in one round, you're going to park Tessie at the kind of back part of the truck bed container just here. You're then going to call Klaus, and you're then going to shoot the clock. As soon as you do this, you're going to order Klaus to the engineer, and you're going to then run into the diner from the back, and you don't actually need melee macchiato for this. You can just do it without having that perk at that point, but instead you're just going to melee the register several times, probably best done with the wonder weapon out, and that's going to open it up, and then you're going to walk past the trucker, and this is crucial, because the way we parked Tessie means that the container is going to pop open on its own, because it just registers Tessie's proximity to the container, but the issue is it won't revive the trucker unless you physically go past it yourself, and you can then climb onto Tessie, and then onto the container, and then onto the roof, and you can get the blue zombie in the lightning, and then jump off, wake up the yellow zombie by walking near to it, that's the engineer, and then get onto the red roof, get the trucker frozen, and then hop across to the yellow lightning and get that one frozen as well. But let's say something goes wrong and one of the zombies doesn't make it to their lightning, or they don't revive properly, or what have you. This is where forcing the lightning comes into play. So at this point in the Easter egg, you've got the Wunderwaffe attachment for Tessie, and you're going to use that for this step. So go to the diner, and you're looking for the sparking streetlight that is not turned on. You're going to shoot that with the Tessie Wunderwaffe, and that is then going to start sparking a lot more. And as you can see, this is the first one I had in my game. You're then going to look for another sparking streetlight, and you're going to shoot that with Tessie, and then a third and final one. And when you shoot that third one, you'll see the lightning immediately begin. Now, I showed you the order of streetlights I got in my game, but your order could be different. You just need to base it on which one is sparking first for you. Shoot that first, and then find the next sparking one, and then the next sparking one. Now, you might be confused because you might be trying to do this and it might not be working. If that's the case, you need to go to the next round because you've probably already activated it on that round you didn't realize, or something like that. The next thing we're going to talk about is the farm steps. So for this, if you're having any trouble, switching to Frenzied Guard with Frenzy Fire and Extension can be really solid. And if you've just switched and you're like, oh, that means I have to charge up my field upgrade again, you can get a free full power over in Zarya Cosmodrome. You just need to stand here and shoot here, as you can see, and that will give you a free full power. Then when you start the Relic defense, you're going to probably use your Frenzied Guard first, and then after that you can throw monkeys and Casimirs, and if you don't have either of those, then you can use decoys if you really want to. Point turrets are great to throw out here, and I'd suggest throwing those towards the relics that are furthest from the trap, and then I would turn on the trap whenever your monkey bomb is about to go away. And after you've used your Frenzied Guard, I'd also suggest switching back to Ether Shroud to start working on getting that charged up again. Usually though, in my experience, this step doesn't cause people too many problems, so hopefully that's the same for you. Now, you've obviously got to still do your real step here. You've got to grab the soul on the dock and all that stuff. But that is really easy in my experience. There's not really a huge amount of extra tips that I feel like I need to give for that stuff. It's just all in my no-nonsense guide. So if you haven't watched the guide and you've got this far in the video, what the hell are you doing? First of all, go watch the guide. I made it long for a reason. It contains a ton of valuable information on all the steps in the Easter egg. So that's an absolute essential companion to this video. But the next thing that we need to talk about is the soul collection bit right before you go into boss. So for this, if you don't collect all 3 souls per fog zone, you're going to hear a kind of bong sound and it will fail the step. And that will mean that you are forced to retry this the next round. But I think the thing that some people miss out on is that they're going to take like 30 to 40 seconds to actually spawn in the first place once you activate Klaus. So wait for the souls to leave the pyramid before you drive from Blackwater Lake to Janus Towers, and that way you'll actually have them all spawned in ready for you to pick up. You can then go from Janus to farm, and then farm to Ashwood, and farm to Blackwater, and that will complete your route, and you'll be teleported into Bossfight. Okay, let's talk boss. I've got to cover several topics here because this is obviously the most challenging part of the Easter egg. I need to talk weapon recommendations. I need to talk Gobblegums, other stuff in general, like your augments and perk selection, things like that, and also the differences between solo and co-op. So there's tons to cover here, so buckle up, bear with me. I think we'll start with Gobbles. You've got two options for Gobblegums. You're either going to go with the kind of basic rares, as they're called, which are the blue Gobblegums, which is essentially just the generic stuff that everybody ends up earning a good amount of from just playing the game. Or you're going to be a gooner, and you're going to goon with your red ultra Gobblegums, and you're going to be popping your idolize and your perkaholics and all those sorts of things. Now, in my opinion, the best Gobbles for this fight, weirdly, are kind of the cheapy blue rare ones. I mean, yeah, sure, if you're going to pop a raindrops or something, you just get everything, and that's amazing. But that's gooning, okay? So my recommendation would be to use the following three. I think that Shields Up is amazing because it doubles your shield durability for a couple of minutes, and it gives you your shields back. And I also really like using Cashback because having an extra max ammo in this for 2 extra Casimirs is going to be really amazing. Then for your third slot, this is the non-blue recommendation that I make, and I make that with a lot of hesitation, but I still make it, and it's Requipment, which is a purple, and that refreshes your equipment over time. It's on a periodic cooldown, and it means that you can get your equipment back a couple of times over time, adding even more Casimirs into your arsenal as you play. Now, there is a debate about whether Casimirs are best or whether Monkey Bombs are best. I'm going to give you a bit of information about both choices, and you can use that to decide for yourself which you prefer. I'm a Casimirs lover. The reason I love Casimirs is that I want to be able to throw them very quickly. They last a really good amount of time, and they also do good damage to bears. This used to be a really big deal in solo because bears were a pain in the butt. However, bears are no longer in solo because of the nerfs, and so you can kind of ignore that point a little bit at this point. But if you're playing co-op, you still will need to pay some attention to the bears. Now, another benefit of the Casimir fast throw time is that you do not need to use the stamina up augment, which allows you to use equipment while sprinting. And so that basically means that you're freeing up a stamina up augment slot for something else. And that is a big deal. So I really like Casimirs even more so because of that point. Now, there is an argument for monkeys, and that's that monkeys are cheaper, and so if you're a speedrunner, then you're working with limited salvage, so you're probably going to be running monkeys. Similarly, if your team's going into boss and you're like, oh, I need to craft something, you can craft monkeys, that's fine. And another thing that some people prefer with monkeys is that what monkeys will do is they will cause zombies to run towards them and stand around for a little bit before they explode, whereas Casimirs will damage during the duration of the Casimir. And this means that you're going to have other zombies respawning while the Casimir is active, and they'll be constantly keeping spawning because lots of zombies will be constantly dying. Whereas with the monkey, that won't be happening. It will just be grouping a lot of the zombies that you've already got. So it might be nice to have all the zombies around you actually stay there for a moment, as opposed to having a lot of respawns in different areas. But there's also a counterpoint to that, which is that with monkeys, they're not going to be slaying all of those zombies, and so the drops that you might get, which you do get from Casimirs, just might not be there at all for the monkeys, unless you also assist with giving those zombies a final blow. So with all of that said, I prefer Casimirs. That's my choice. And my lethal equipment of choice is typically tomahawks, because I want to be able to make use of the hot foot stamina up augment if I need it. It's not essential, but it's just nice to have in my back pocket for if I really need to get the hell out of the laser. For field upgrade, you definitely want Ether Shroud. Like, there is just no other option really that I would recommend here. Ether Shroud with extra charge is just incredible for this, and I would use Group Shroud if you are in a co-op game as well. I think in co-op, you could probably make an argument that not everybody needs the Ether Shroud, so then I suppose, yes, you could have somebody run Frenzied so they can get their armor back a bit more easily, and maybe a healing aura would be nice for the team, and you'd probably put that healing aura on the most experienced player who was less likely to need an Ether Shroud in the fight. But generally, you just might as well whack Ether Shroud with extra charge on for everybody. I think that it's just an incredibly powerful option. For weapon of choice, I've got 4 weapons, which I think should be in contention here for you to decide whether or not you want to bring in. The first is the Gauntlet that you get during the Easter egg. This is a fantastic weapon. It really is brilliant, and part of its brilliance comes from its lifesteal. In the fight, there are going to be certain moments where something goes wrong, and you basically need to panic a little on the fly and come up with a strategy to get back into your flow. And the lifesteal of the Gauntlet means that your survivability is massively improved. It will allow you to stand behind a pillar and literally 1v1 melee a bear and come out the victor. And it's also nice for regenerating health anytime you're in the middle of a minefield of rockets and you're having some trouble there too. You just have to remember the fact that it's also not really that great for taking out zombies. So if you're trying to spam into a big horde of zombies to gain plates, for example, you should probably be switching over to your other weapon. The nice thing about the Gauntlet, though, is that it can suck in the free max ammo and free full armor that are floating in the corners of the arena during the fight. Those two are a permanent spawn. They are separate to the temporary spawns that you get after each immune phase is finished. And so it's nice to have for that benefit as well. The next weapons to consider are either of the Rayguns, either the Raygun Mark 1 or the Raygun Mark 2. Each of these is a fantastic option, and I would always recommend bringing a raygun into the fight if you get one in your game. But the choice between which raygun is a little bit more fiddly. So let's break it down. I think the Raygun Mark II is incredible for boss damage. It's really good for that if you're doing boss damage with a raygun. And it's also amazing for taking down bears very fast. But sometimes, if you're trying to hide behind cover, for example, and survive for a moment while the laser attacks you, the Mark II can be a little annoying because it's better for individual targets and less good for massive groups around you. Whereas the Raygun Mark 1 is still good in all of those other scenarios of boss damage and of just taking out general zombies. It's less good for single targets, so you'll have to work a little bit harder to take those zombies down, but it means that if you're in one of those tight corners, it's going to be really great because its splash damage is just going to kill everything around you if you're shooting at the floor at your feet, for example. So they're both great. I very slightly prefer the Raygun Mark 1, but I think that they are both really fantastic options. Now, your fourth option, if you don't get a raygun, is to bring in a bullet weapon. And my recommendation for bullet weapon is anything with a smoke grenade attachment, which is called a cloak grenade in this game. And the reason for that is it's basically a free ether shroud for yourself or for your teammate. And if you fire it at Tessie while you're trying to get a repair off, you can successfully do that without needing a Casimir or anything else. They are really damn strong, but if you're in a solo game specifically, I would always say you should just have a raygun in the fight. There are so many ways to get rayguns in your game, like from purple pods or from side Easter eggs or what have you, that going in solo without a raygun is you just sort of saying, yeah, I do not want an optimal setup here. But if you are going to bring in that bullet weapon, especially if you're in co-op and you're just helping out the team and somebody else has the raygun and somebody else has the gauntlet, the nice thing about having a bullet weapon is you can refresh your ammo at the ammo cache super easily and you'll get your smokes back. So that's a nice benefit to basically have infinite ether shrouds just on demand. Just obviously make sure you have enough ammo to do that. So now let's talk augments. These are going to be boss-specific augment recommendations based on me having done the boss a lot solo prior to the patch while it was harder. For Stam, Hot foot on the minor augments is great, and guns up would definitely be my major. For quick revive, we're going to want to turn on equivalent exchange and slow death to increase time in last stand. Fine. And then with Jug, I really love probiotic in this fight. I would love iron core, but the issue is that sometimes you do have armor and you're still taking a lot of health damage. And so iron core doesn't actually help you there at all. It just leaves you at your base Jug HP. Whereas probiotic means that you just always have that extra little buffer. So I really like that. And I would put on hardened plates, or if you have the option to do both, I would do hardened and durable. For melee Mac, I would make sure that espresso is on, because faster melee attacks, if you're spam meleeing behind a pillar, are going to really save you with that wonder weapon. And you'll want fast pitcher in the minor augments on speed cola. For vulture aid, you must have picky eater on, because there's a chance that you're going to get a Casimir just from a zombie, which is amazing. And on death perception, I'd put on a sixth sense, or I would have treasure hunter on from earlier in the game. PhD slider tribologist, same as usual. And then, as I've said, ether shroud, extra charge. Bosh, you are done. So, with all that said, let's talk through the phases of the fight, and I'll give you some tips as we go. And I've got a live conversion of a solo completion, which I think will also be really valuable for you guys to see. So in the first stage of the fight, your job is to be fairly aggressive, and you do not need to boost into the boss when you go up the ramp. You just need to drive up the ramp, and the game will auto speed you up, and that will allow you to hit the boss. Now, as I talk here, I'm going to basically make recommendations as if you are always playing in solo. And if you're in co-op, it's usually easy to just extend what I'm saying to the co-op play space. But if I have specific new co-op tips to mention, then I will call those out as well. You're going to spend as much time as you can in Tessie, and you're going to try and get 1 or 2 rams off. And then as soon as the rockets start spawning in, you're going to stop prioritizing doing the rams, and you're going to drive very slowly and just weave left and right constantly on your controller sticks. You do not want to be just charging forwards to try and run away from the rockets, but instead you want to be basically snaking and using that as your means to have rockets spawn in around you, and you kind of dodge and weave as they spawn. When you do this a bit, you'll get into that first boss immune phase, and your job then is to grab the purple beams. The recommendation I have for you on this is you're going to see the purple beam spawn, and sometimes it's tempting to take the shortest possible path to it, but actually sometimes you do want to kind of drive around that center object area, because the boss will spin attack you if you go too near that, and that can knock you away from where you're trying to get to. So just be wary of the boss's positioning and keep that in mind as you're making your way towards those purple beams. Also, to get to the beam, it's definitely a good idea to use your boost. Once again, it's fine to not have your boost ready to use. Like, it's fine if it's on cooldown, because so long as you drive up the ramp, you are then going to get auto boosted towards the boss. As soon as you go up the ramp and you hit the boss while it's in that immune phase, you're going to want to switch to your other seat in Tessie and use the turret to shoot the boss. This just does tons of damage to the boss, and especially if you're hitting that yellow crit, is going to be the way that everybody solos this most effectively. As you're doing this, be mindful of your armor levels. If your armor is getting low, you can obviously go and grab that free max armor from the side of the room, but it should be sort of okay at this early stage of the fight. And also just keep on aiming for that orange crit spot when it's open on the boss, as that's going to mean that your charge attack in the car does a lot more damage, and your Tessie gun will do more damage as well. When you complete that first immune phase, you're also going to notice the boss kind of sits still for maybe 5 to 10 seconds, and that's an opportunity to get 1 or 2 more shots off in Tessie, but do not get too greedy here. You only want to literally do 1 or 2. So what happens when Tessie breaks, right? Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to try and time it so that you're not in the middle of a boss rocket attack when you're going to get a repair. And you can do that by just waiting until a rocket phase has ended and then going in for the repair. And you're just going to throw a Casimir, but don't throw it underneath the car. Just make sure you throw it somewhere where it's actually going to spawn in. Otherwise, it will despawn and the zombies won't be attracted to it. As you get the repair, you need to be looking down often and checking to see whether or not the rockets are coming in on your location. If they are, just run away. If they're not, then you can finish the repair off nice and easily. And if you do have to run away for a minute, make sure that you're using your weapon to still farm plates from the zombies and to lifesteal potentially as well. Now, also in that second phase of the fight, once you complete the immune phase, that's when you're going to get your free max ammo and free full armor spawn on the map. And so you'll want to make sure that you grab those before they despawn, as they will blink away over time. So keep an eye out for those in maybe the first 30 seconds of the next phase after the immune phase. The way that next phase works is actually pretty damn similar. You're going to do the exact same thing, except you're going to be really mindful of dodging rockets when you're thinking of attacking the boss. Sometimes it will basically spawn rockets right underneath its position, and so you just need to be careful of the timing of that. But generally, you want to still be being pretty aggressive. Now, sometimes you're going to see half the room light up with rockets, and this is a pretty frustrating thing. And you're then going to just try and keep driving around the edges of the room. I would try to avoid going up the ramp where possible, as the ramp is a dangerous place for the boss to then knock you back into the arena and potentially into rockets. But you obviously can if you absolutely have to. You'll dodge and weave a bunch here, and you'll use your Casimirs to get Tessie heals. And ideally, you want to be avoiding using Ether Shroud at this stage. You probably want to just be focusing on using your Casimirs if you can. But you'll then get into your next immune phase, and this works very much the same as the other one. Now, the challenge after this immune phase is that you'll have a few seconds to shoot the boss with Tessie, just like I said before, and you'll also have a fresh max ammo and a free max armor, which is very nice, but the boss is immediately going to go into its laser beam phase, which is the notorious third phase. And for this phase, you now do want to be using the boost each time you attack the boss, compared to before where you didn't need to. And the way it's going to work is the boss is going to start charging a purple beam, and that beam is going to take about 10 seconds to charge, and then it's going to start firing. If you boost attack the boss while it's charging, it will interrupt that, and it will not do its laser. However, if you're too late and it starts lasering, the laser will attack you, and it will follow you unless you take cover behind pillars or something like that. It is very damaging, so what you need to do is make sure that you are very on the ball, counting in your head those 10 seconds as soon as you hear that laser start charging, and making sure that you boost in time to prevent the laser attack from coming out. The issue that you might find is that the boss will be interrupted, but then it will start charging a laser once again, and your boost will be on cooldown. And so you actually need to tactically not just try to instantly boost into the boss at the start of the laser charge, but actually you need to do it sort of towards the end of when it's charging. So if it's 10 full seconds, you want to sort of boost at the 7-second mark potentially, and that will mean that the boost is actually off cooldown and you can use it, and you'll successfully get the boss stun as well. Now also, if you're in co-op, there's bears. They're annoying. You can use your hand cannon to take those down a bit more easily too. That's just a nice tip for the fight in general. But after enough boosts into the boss while it's charging during its laser phase, its third phase, you'll then get to the final phase of the fight where you basically just have to rinse and repeat, getting the purple lasers once again, and then just accelerating towards the boss up the ramp and hitting it, and then hitting it with your Tessie turret while it's in its yellow crittable state. Don't get greedy with that state. You only want to fire off maybe 4 to 5 shots per go, I would say, and then prioritize getting ready to avoid rockets once those resume. But that really is the fight in a nutshell. I think the most common problems that people have is that they overboost in the fight, and then because they're boosting, they're out of control and they can't deal with it. Another problem that is a very common one is that people get out of Tessie, and when you're outside Tessie, you can survive, don't get me wrong, but it becomes a lot harder to protect Tessie, and so you kind of get into a loop of the boss stealing Tessie and throwing it, and then it's broken, then you need to heal it again, and it's just frustrating. So try to stay in Tessie if you have the opportunity, I would say. Use that Tessie turret for crit damage. You're gonna be minimally using your Raygun or anything like that on the boss. In my experience, it's just worse to do it that way. You really do want to be using the Tessie turret, and especially now that they've made the fight easier, I think that you should be able to get this done without too much hassle. But the proof's going to be in the pudding. What I'm going to link you on screen right now is a live conversion of the fight with me breaking down exactly how you want to be playing it second by second, so you can see in real time how it all works best. So click through to that video now, and it will give you a really clear picture of the fight in its current state. Thanks for watching, folks. I've been MrRoflWaffles. This has been a massive project to put together, so I hope it was useful for you, and I'll see you in that video as well. Click through. Bye for now.